Hello, everyone. It is me, Candace, here with another author event for you. I am so excited today to do our virtual campfire event because this is going to be super, super fun. I have all my campfire supplies. You saw my campfire on screen there. I am in the mood, and this book is so spooky and it's perfect for a campfire. So I really excited to have author S.A. Barnes with me today. She also writes as Stacy Cade, and she is the author of Dead Silence. And this book is so good. It is very spooky, and I enjoyed it very much. And S.A. Barnes works in a high school library, which I very much appreciate. And she talks with students, and I love that her bio says she removes the occasional forgotten cheese stick as bookmark, because that sounds very accurate from what I know of high school students. Also, she has published numerous novels across different genres under S.A. Barnes and Stacy Cade. And she lives in Illinois with more dogs than books than is advisable, which I really appreciate because I have 3 cats and 2 dogs. So I appreciate more dogs or / pets and books than advisable, because that is also my life. And a very patient spouse, which I have as well. So I am very excited. This book, Dead Silence, is basically if the Titanic was a spaceship that disappeared 20 years ago, and then like a ragtag Firefly kind of a crew finds it. And of course, it's full of like frozen dead bodies because it's in space and they're all dead. So do they go onto the ship? Of course they do. And does everything go wrong? Of course it does. And so I super enjoyed this book. I know that y'all will too. We have signed book plates from Stacy as well. So welcome Stacy, and thank you so much for coming to our virtual campfire.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. And I love that description of the book. That is just perfect.
And that, because I mean, I feel like that's bad is what it is. And everything goes wrong. I put this in my I made a short video. I think you saw it because you liked it. But for those who didn't see it, it was an emotional damage video, and this book was in it because it gave me severe emotional damage. But it's okay because that is what a lot of horror does. So I was okay. It's like good emotional, like entertaining emotional damage, not like long lasting emotional damage. So thank you for writing this. I want to start off setting our spooky mood. If you could read around the campfire,
Sure.
that would be amazing. While she is reading, I'm going to show y'all that I am making what I call keyboard s'mores, which are tiny s'mores. I use Golden Grahams cereal and mini marshmallows and chocolate chips and a small candle. It can be a tea light candle or like whatever's around your house. And it actually, I was practicing, and it like really does burn the marshmallow. You put it over the little fire, and then we're gonna make s'mores while Stacy is reading. So Stacy, take it away whenever you are ready, and I'm gonna put the fire back on the screen.
All right. I think what I'm going to do is read you. Chapter 1 is only like 2 pages long, so I'll read you a little of chapter 2 as well.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So, chapter 1, now. Varick's Peace and Rehabilitation Tower, Earth, 2149. My head is throbbing again. A white-hot line of pain from the back of my skull down to the right side of my jaw, and a dead man is signaling me from across the common room. His hand waves frantically in a come here gesture, his eyes wild with panic. Resolutely, I turn my gaze away from the hallucination and attempt to refocus my attention on the living visitors across the scarred and battered plastic table from me. I'm sorry, what did you say? My tongue feels thick, unwieldy. That's the drugs. Both too many and not enough. I said, you lied to us. Reed Darrow leans forward impatiently. An older executive type in a black suit and a vintage watch paces just behind him, supervising our conversation with a thoughtful and yet still disapproving scowl. About what? I'm confused. It's not difficult to do these days, but with Reed, a junior investigator from Barracks' QA department, I'm almost always clear. He's been in here every few days since the Raleigh search and rescue team dropped me off into Barracks' care 3 weeks ago. Max Donovan, my other visitor, clears his throat loudly. Barracks wants to help you, but we need you to help us help you. He nods at me in encouragement, his familiar face wreathed in wrinkles I'm not yet used to. He was just an investigator for my employer the last time I saw him. But now he is apparently the head of the whole Q&A department. I've told you everything I remember. My skull fracture is, according to the tower doctors, healed. And during the month-long return trip to Earth, the Raleigh's medbay staff tested me for every virus, bacteria, and parasite under this sun. Not to mention all the exploratory diagnostics and procedures over the last 3 weeks in the tower. The results are always the same. The visions, pain, and memory loss are likely psychological, not physical in origin. Reed ignores me. You know, some people think you murdered your crew for a larger share of the fine before taking that escape pod. I stiffen, hands clenching against the urge to hit him. Then you hitched a ride back here with the Raleigh team, gambling that we'd buy this whole amnesia and psychotic break story and you could hide in the tower. He waves his hand around as though conjuring an image from thin air. The Varick's Peace and Rehabilitation Tower is a dumping ground for all the broken and damaged, including me. Varick's has more ships, more crews working in space than any other corporation. And sometimes docking clamps don't disengage. Sometimes people can't handle the isolation of years in space. Sometimes a coolant leak contaminates the oxygen, killing off brain cells before it can be corrected. Shit happens. Sometimes even to you. Sometimes even if you don't remember it. I swallow hard against my dry as dust throat. My crew, they're dead, but I didn't kill them. You sure you want to stick with that story? Reed asks with a terse smile. He holds up a folded piece of paper, real paper, which means it came from the highest levels of Varick's. We've been monitoring K-147, he says. Just the sector name makes me flinch. I lost everything there. So, I ask. We've got movement, Claire, Max says gently. Not possible. My lips go numb and a loud hum starts up in my ears. The Aurora, I whisper. Max nods. Your ghost ship is on the move, Kvalik, Reed injects with smug satisfaction. Max leans forward in his chair to meet my eyes. Maybe it's time you tell us everything. Again, from the beginning. So, Chapter 2. Then, Section K-147, 2 months ago. I have a loose screw somewhere. Amazing. We've been living on other planets and moons for 100 years and visiting space for even longer than that, and still, a tiny piece of metal with misaligned grooves can fuck everything up. How's it going out there, Kvalik? Baller's voice pierces the quiet of my helmet, drowning out the soft and soothing rush of oxygen. Somehow he's louder out here than he is in person. I ignore him. Kvalik, he sings out my name. Hello. It's fine. Better if you'd shut up and let me concentrate. I grab for the screwdriver dangling on a tool tether attached to my suit. He sighs, the noise right on the edge of a petulant whine. Lourdes says we've still got a wobble in the signal, TL, and we're going to miss the rendezvous with the hauler if we don't leave soon. As if I'm unaware of those things as team lead. But then again, Voller excels at stating the obvious and being exceptionally annoying while doing so. After 26 months in close quarters, I'm ready to murder him for that as much as for the snoring that rumbles through the air vents into my quarters, keeping me awake. Unfortunately, he's a good pilot. I ignore him and focus on checking the beacon hardware, particularly where we've merged new with old. Software updates can be uploaded via signal from anywhere, but hardware is hands-on. And even with years of practice and gloves designed for delicate work, it takes concentration. Snap off a piece or lose too many screws, and it's a whole operation to get replacements all the way out here at the edge of the solar system. Not that there are any replacements, as this is the last beacon. Not just for this tour or this sector, but the last. For us, anyway. The next time the ComWeb, a network of beacons throughout the solar system designed to boost ship and colony transmissions for virtually instantaneous communication, needs an upgrade, A Varick SmartTech machine will be at the controls. The machine will probably lose fewer screws. But no need for CommWeb maintenance teams means no need for CommWeb maintenance teams leads. No need for me. This is it. The last time I'll be out here. Not just as TL, but forever. No more peace and quiet of the vast emptiness. No more endless field of tiny stars surrounding me. No more ship with bright lights to beckon me back from the dark. I shove that thought down, way down. Maybe it's the receiver. I slide my hand along the metal support structure, pulling myself along to the other side, trying to avoid getting tangled in the process. My tethers to the beacon and our ship, a CommWeb sniffer called the L1N4 Lina, keep me from floating away, but they're also a pain in the ass. I tighten up every screw I can find, and eventually my comm channel crackles. You got it, TL. Lourdes, my comm specialist, says. Her husky voice is softer in my ear. Cycling up now. Come back in from the cold. The gentle tug on the red line of tether tells me that someone is at the cable controls, ready to reel me in on my signal. Probably Kane, my mech and second in command. He doesn't like other people touching the mechanics of Lina, even something as simple as a winch. Anything can break, he says, and repairs are limited out here. Not that it matters anymore. I'm fairly sure Lina will be scrapped once we're done. She was already old when I inherited her with this sector assignment, battered, scratched up, smelling of overheated metal with shitty airlock seals that are pretty much a full-time job to keep hard foam repairing, even with Varick swapping them out for equally shitty replacements every time we finish a job. But Lina is home. After unhooking the blue tether from the beacon structure, I reattach the far end of the designated loop on my suit. As I do, my gloved fingers brush over the carabiner that connects me to the red tether, to Lina and the future I no longer have. My whole life, I've wanted nothing more than to be out here, away from everyone. That is the beauty of space. There's nothing out here. Sure, stars, planets, and communication beacons, but no people. And now, that's over. For a moment, I consider it, my hand hovering over the latch. It would be so easy. Flip the safety catch, unhook myself from the tether, and just push off. Float away. Eventually, I'd have to decide between freezing to death or suffocating as my suit ran out of juice, but it would be my choice. My choice out here among the stars, the distant glimmering planets, and the absolute silence of space. Kovalik, Kane asks, are you ready? No, I'm not ready. I'm not meant to be dirt side, not for long and certainly not forever. Without a ship, you're trapped. Bad things happen when you can't get away. Just the thought of being permanently gravity bound and surrounded by so many people again makes my breath rush in and out faster. Guess that means suffocation will probably end up being a problem first. Okay, that's where I'm stopping. Oh, you're muted.
I just realized, I was like, wait, I'm on mute. I love the start of this book for so many reasons. One, you get to like meet everyone pretty much in that space that you just read. But also I love that this, like the framing of this book, and that was actually one of the things I was going to ask you. So I guess I can start with that question, even though it technically was not my first one, because I love like the framing of this book is so good because as y'all just heard, like pretty much immediately, you know that Claire, who is our main character who is telling this story, is being interrogated. She doesn't really remember what happened, and her entire crew is dead. And so to me, it made me like, oh, I have to keep reading this book because I have to find out how her entire crew died. Did she do it? Did she not do it? I don't know. And so I really enjoy how it starts. So I wanted to ask, like, why did you decide to frame the book in this way? Because it does come back to the interrogation. Like it is her telling the story of what happened. And it does come back around later on in the book.
It does.
I'm just wondering about this framing and like how you decided to frame it that way. Cause it was very good. It makes you want to keep reading.
Thank you. I'm so glad. That was kind of what I was hoping for, what I was aiming for. You know, a lot of times with writing, I never know exactly why I want to do something. It's sort of instinct or something kind of pulling you. Because I certainly could have started with the part where she's, you know, I've got a loose screw, which by the way is a line that still makes me laugh. Sometimes I laugh at stuff that I'm like, it doesn't feel like I wrote it because it just came from somewhere. I could have started there, but to me, there was there was something about starting this and starting with somebody who was already being doubted, starting it with someone who was already in a position where they were an unreliable narrator. They were very clearly established as an unreliable narrator. And I think that was pretty much an influence. I mean, there were a lot of things that went into this, but I think that was kind of an influence from Aliens, the second movie in that series. For those of you who haven't seen it, A, you should watch it. And B, there's a scene toward the beginning when Ripley is rescued from the escape pod or ship or whatever it was from the first movie, and she's trying to explain to the corporation, like, this is what happened. I'm telling you, this is what happened, and you should not go to this planet that you've recently lost contact with the colony. Bad things have happened to them. Don't do it. And they kind of like they don't believe her. There's a tinge of hysterical woman in there, which really made me mad. And you know, guilt her into it, like these people sort of need you, these people kind of need. And so I really felt like I don't know, I just felt like that was a really powerful place to start because she had already failed. I wanted to start from the perspective of someone who had really dealt with failure. In her mind, she has already failed because she is here, she's in the tower, which is basically a mental rehabilitation or in just a mental facility, and her crew is not with her and is dead for all she knows. So she's failed. And I think one of the hardest things to do is to face up to what you consider your biggest failure and try again. And that's, to me, what the framing chapters sort of force her to do.
Yeah, it definitely does. And the other thing that I love about Claire is that she is neurodiverse. She has PTSD, for sure. And she is also an unreliable narrator. And the people around her do view her as that like hysterical woman kind of a thing. And either that or they feel sorry for her for what she went through in the past. So there's this whole thing surrounding her, and she has like all the stuff going on in her head, which adds to the whole thing. And her being an unreliable narrator for sure is kind of adds like that mystery and that like, ooh, like what actually happened here.
Yeah.
But I love that she's also this person that has so much going on in her head that really pushes through all of that to do what she needs to do. And I just love that about her. And I guess I'm wondering too, like, where did she come from? Like, why did you make her like this?
Well, I always find my favorite characters are the ones that are, and I say this with love, because I think we're all screwed up in some way, but my favorite characters are the ones that are screwed up, the ones that are really dealing with trauma in some way, maybe not trauma to this level. I mean, obviously Claire has had a very traumatic life, but people who are really still dealing with their own flaws and vulnerabilities on it, or being forced to. That to me is the most interesting part, when you're really forced to deal with the thing you don't want to deal with, right? The thing you don't want to hold your hand against the stove, and the book's going to make you hold your hand against the stove. On a personal note, from that perspective, I think there's a lot of me in Claire, in the sense that anxiety is something that I have struggled with my whole life. And part of having an anxiety disorder is not being sure if you can trust your own perception of reality. Is this something to worry about? Should I be worried? I spend an inordinate amount of time worrying about whether I should be worried about something. And that's just part of it. And so I was and continue to be intrigued by that idea, because I honestly think when it comes to horror, there's really nothing more terrifying than not being able to trust your own grasp on reality. No monster is in my opinion, no monster is as scary as that. So that was what I sort of drew on to kind of, pull her into who she is. And I was fascinated too with Claire in that, she sees things that other people don't see. You heard a little bit of that in the beginning, so that's not a spoiler. And I was kind of interested in that, there's a lot of sci-fi and a lot of cool stuff going on. And we see a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. And I think it's interesting that, I can drive within probably 10 minutes of my house and pass like a psychic and a medium and a whatever that have phone numbers that you can call, and they have offices and whatever. And where are those people in the future? Like, assuming that she actually does see things, that is not hallucinating, they would be there too. Like, why are we suddenly not seeing ghosts just because we're on spaceships? Do you know what I mean? Like, I was really intrigued by that idea, and so that certainly partly formed who she was as well, as that part of her, and kind of that same idea of, we're not okay, generally speaking. Ghosts are seen as kind of like, I'm not sure, but we talk about guardian angels, and people don't seem as flinchy about that. So where we draw that line is sort of wavy, and I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And also, what I liked about this, and I don't think this is too much of a spoiler. A lot of my questions are so spoilery that I was like, I can't ask that. But this one I don't think is as spoilery. But what's interesting is that, as you saw from the reading, Claire does see things that other people don't see. But what's interesting about this book is that it sort of puts everyone in those same shoes where everyone is questioning their reality. No one in this book knows if what they're seeing is real or not.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of so no one believes Claire until, it starts happening to them, and they're like, oh crap, maybe she's got something here. And
maybe we shouldn't have been giving her such a hard time.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, well, she just sees stuff and she's nuts and she, whatever. And then it's like, but then everybody questions their own reality because the Aurora. That's all I'll say.
That's good, because the Aurora. Yeah,
the
exactly.
Aurora, that's it. That's all I can say about that. Read the book if you want to know more, but it is. And so I thought that was really interesting that you I don't really have a question there, but that was more of a comment that you sort of put everyone in Claire's shoes as well.
I mean, that's the thing that I liked about what I had fun with. And there were parts where I went back and I added things, because I was like, Claire, because some of this came to me as I was writing it, so I had to go back and add so everything would sort of line up. Claire doesn't even always know which is which, what's happening, and is this potentially a hallucination, or is this she's really, so then as our narrator, we really don't know either. And I as the person writing it, I'm like, which way is this gonna go? I don't know. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun playing with that.
And it was a lot of fun to read, because as a reader, you definitely have no idea. You're like, oh, is this real? Is this not? I have no idea. And you have no idea what happened either. And so it's like, it's what makes it such a page turner, because she is unreliable. And as a reader, you're not sure if what she remembers, what's good about it though, is that as a reader, I never disbelieved Claire. You know what I mean? She's always, she's authoritative and she's a good character. And so it's like, no, I believe Claire, but also what I'm not sure of is I believe she saw the things she saw, and I believe that she did the things she did or whatever. What I don't know is if it was real or if it was in her head. And that's what I like, is that she is unreliable in that she doesn't know what's real, so you don't know what's real. But she's not out the box you're just oh, I don't like this person, I gotta throw this away. She's very relatable, so it's like, man, I could see me being in this situation. What would I do? I don't know. I need to find out what happened to her crew. Did she kill them all? Is there a reason? She wouldn't just do that, would she? And so it's that's me reading this book.
Well, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. I actually just wrote an article for a newsletter that's going to be coming out about it, because the first time somebody other than me referred to Claire as unreliable, I was almost I had this really defensive reaction, because she's 100% unreliable in terms of the narration. She doesn't know, but that was the thing, is it's because she doesn't know. She is not attempting to deceive. She's not she just doesn't know, and her perspective on the world is limited, as all of ours is. And so she's working with sort of a kind of a damaged, equipment. She's I don't know, but and what I hope that people got out of it and felt connected to her because of it is that, to an extent, we are all like that, because we never know what somebody else is thinking. We never know. We have our perspective, and reality is sort of one of those mutually agreed upon decisions, right? We all decide that this color is blue, but I don't really know if what you're seeing is what I'm seeing. And so it kind of plays with, I think, some of that like philosophical territory without getting too, super deep. So
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that like with Claire not knowing and you don't know either, it's like you're on that journey together. And it's scarier to me than if I would like I feel like if I would have suspected that Claire was just I don't know, she's just the kind of character that would like never do anything like what they're saying she did. And
mhm.
so I think if she was the kind of character that I was like, I think maybe she did it and that I thought she was deceiving us, it's a different thing. So I think it was scarier because she's not evil. She's not the kind of person that would have killed her own crew. So it's like you don't know what happened. And
Not
like
without reason. Not without a
for
not
that
without a
reason,
reason.
yes,
Right.
right. Like
Yeah.
she wouldn't just kill them for no reason, which was basically they're like, "Oh, you just killed your crew for no reason." She's like, and so you're like, "No, like she has her reasons for doing things and she follow, it's like so I don't know. And so I think that made it scarier to me that like you don't know and like she could be deceiving you, but maybe she's not, but maybe she is, but she doesn't seem like this kind of so I think it's like because she doesn't seem like the kind of person that would be deceiving you, it makes it scarier because you're right there on the journey with her going like, oh man, what if this was me? I don't know what I would do either. Claire, I'm right there with you. I'm gonna go space myself off this ship.
I love that because that is exactly what I wanted. And
Oh
something I've been
good.
thinking about like the last couple days is, whenever you read a horror book, the author or the narrator or whoever you want to think of is sort of like, taking somebody's hand in the dark and they're leading you across a room, right?
Right.
And you have to trust them enough that they're going to get you wherever they need to go. And the thing is, with someone you think is deceiving you, you're going to be a lot more cautious. Is there a ledge? Is there a piece of furniture I'm going to run into? Whatever. The
Yeah.
problem is Claire has no idea. Claire has no idea either. So she's going to run you both off of like a ledge because she doesn't know. And so
Right.
hearing you say that, I mean, that's just amazing because I really, really wanted that, and I was worried that reliable narrators really is hard, because you want people to like them, but also to have some kind of engagement in the story, and you've got to be careful not to cross your wires, right? But I think based on hearing what you're saying, it's interesting to me because I think then what happens is the empathy comes from wanting her to know as well as you to know,
Yes.
which is I had not thought about that. So
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you.
that's true. That's true because it's like, no, I wanted her to know. Like as I was reading, it's like, I hope her memory comes back. Like I want her to figure it out. And maybe her memory will come back and she is freaking evil and she did all that. Like, I don't know if that's gonna be it or not, but like I did want her to find out. I mean, I wanted to find out for sure, but it's like I also felt for Claire and it's like I want you to find out and I want the people around you to take you seriously because that was the biggest thing too is like all these people just did not take her seriously at all and I wanted to punch many of them in the face
Good.
so
That was
many times
exactly the reaction. Yes.
especially Reed, which we heard Reed in the beginning and I was like no, I would like to punch Reed in the face now please and that
Read
never changed.
scene in there that and you know which one I'm talking about that I quite enjoyed with Reed. And I'm that's all I can say, folks. So
I know, and there's so many questions that I'm like, oh yeah, again, like spoilers, but y'all really should read this book because it's very good. But I do want to ask, this book gets compared to Titanic a lot because the Aurora in this book is like a super fancy spaceship, like a space cruise ship for rich people, basically.
yeah.
And it gets compared. So I was wondering, like, it was the Titanic an inspiration for the Aurora at all?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
100%.
Okay.
I have been obsessed with the Titanic forever. I don't even know, like it's one of those things like it's been there for so long that I don't even remember what would have triggered it. I remember when they found the wreckage in the 80s because I'm old. And I remember like the National Geographic cover and all of that. And so this predates the movie. This is everything just being back. I'm fascinated with it obviously because I think as an adult I can look at it and go, oh, it's the tragedy of the band played on even as the Titanic sank, and it's the tragedy of all the third class passengers. Most of them did not make it out, not because they were locked below, which is a common like misconception because of the movie and various other things, but just because they were the last ones to get up to the top, which is where the lifeboats were. And I mean, you know, whatever. The hubris also of human beings saying it's an unsinkable ship. I mean, you know, the ocean, you know, that's the thing that I think is interesting about space and the ocean is they're both these things. We're kind of making these leaps and we're like, oh, we've got it conquered. We're good. We got it. No problem. And then, you know, the ocean goes whomp with a rogue wave. And it's like, no, you don't got it.
Not so much.
And space is the same thing. Like you think, okay, we're making it. And then something, you know, goes horribly wrong and it doesn't even make it off the launch pad or whatever happens. So the Titanic is just kind of this encapsulation in a way of humanity and all the best and worst things about it. And I'm fascinated with that. But I'm also fascinated with that from the standpoint of someone once described it to me as like a frozen moment in time. And that's what it is, which is, you know, so when you're seeing the wreckage, you're seeing the teacups still like in the cabinet on the seafloor. And you used to be able to see the captain's bathtub in his quarters. You can't anymore because the roof has collapsed because it's deteriorating. This is horrible. There are still boots like that were obviously worn by a person that are on the bottom. It is a moment frozen in time. And so I really wanted to take that for the Aurora. The year that I was working on this or developing this idea, I was in Las Vegas for a conference, and the Luxor has a permanent Titanic display there, but they had a special display for the anniversary that year. And it was a bunch of artifacts that had never been seen. And it was just striking how personal it was. Like socks that were still balled up. You know how well, not all of us, but some of us ball up our socks to keep them together in the drawer. Nobody had touched that since, you know what I mean? Like it was just, and postcards that people had written but never gotten to send. It was just, I mean, amazing. And so I wanted to have that kind of frozen moment in time with the Aurora and with somebody trying to figure out what the heck happened, because that's very much part of the Titanic story as well. I mean, we know iceberg, yes, but there are all these competing ideas about why that iceberg, you know, did the damage that did. Was the metal, you know, inferior? Were the rivets inferior? Was there a fire in the coal room? I know all this random crap. You know, so like I'm fascinated by stuff like that. And so I stole all of that kind of concept for the Aurora of that moment frozen in time. And I really tried to convey that feeling in the description of it.
Yeah, and I think it definitely came across for sure. Down to, and I don't think this is too much of a spoiler because it happens towards the beginning, but down to it literally being frozen.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's like, oh yeah, you know, because when they discover it, it's like that scene is so creepy, and I'm not going to spoil it for everyone, but like when they discover the Aurora, the things that they see as they're like checking it out from the outside and like orbiting it, it's like, oh no. And then they're like, are we going to go on this ship? And you're like, no, please don't. And I mean, if they don't, there's no book. So like clearly,
well, right.
But
it ends in chapter 7.
Right. And so it's like, you know that they're gonna board this ship, like you know it, and it's just like you just did such a good job of like building up that tension of like, please don't do it, like don't do it, like you yell at every horror movie, right? Like, please don't do that. This is such a bad idea, and of course they're gonna do it. But yeah, I just the tension was really really good. And so, okay, so I'm also wondering if you have had any like supernatural or unexplained experiences that have affected your storytelling at all.
I don't think I've ever had anything that has affected my storytelling. This is my one and only ghost story.
Okay.
Okay. And I am one of those people, I'm what's the word, agnostic to the idea of ghosts. Like I think there's definitely the possibility of it. I have never had anything other than this thing I'm going to tell you that is like, you know, makes me, oh yeah, 100%. I just think it's a possibility. I think it's a distinct possibility, but I don't know the mechanics of it. And maybe it's like some science we haven't figured out. I don't know. Okay. So in the house, not the house I live in currently, but the one before, I think I might have family members here, the one on J Street. And there's a staircase that had a light that overhung the staircase. I'm going to use the word chandelier, but that sounds super fancy. It's not. It was just a big old light fixture. And it was had a light switch downstairs so that you could turn it on as you were going up the stairs, or one at the top of the stairs so you could turn it on before you went down. So I was in the bedroom, and it was probably during the winter, I think. So it had been light when I went in there, and then I turned on a light because I was reading. I was home by myself with the dogs. My husband wasn't there. And I decided to stop reading, and I walked down. There was like a little hallway to get to the main hallway off of the bedroom. And it's getting darker and darker and darker because I only had one light on in the bedroom, right? So I'm like, okay, whatever. So as I turn out into the main hallway, we're just pitch black because nighttime. And I remember there was like furniture. We had been rearranging the guest room or whatever. So there was like furniture in the hallway. And I think I'm going to break my neck. I'm going to trip over something. And I don't even know if I said it out loud or if I just thought it. I was like, I should have turned on the light, and the light went on. And I kind of froze. By the way, I had that whole fantasy of if someone came and attacked me, I would scream and I would fight. No, I would freeze like a little rabbit in a bush. It would never happen. So I'm frozen at the top of the stairs. And then my brain kicks in. I'm like, okay, Greg's probably home. My husband's probably home. And he's downstairs and he flipped on the downstairs switch, right? So my voice in this quavery, Greg, are you home? No one is home. So then I kind of go downstairs and I check, look around, making sure that I'm actually, in fact, in the house by myself. And I was. And then I'm like, all right, let's logic through this, right? Maybe the last person who touched the light switch, left it halfway. You can sometimes get them halfway. And the vibration of my footsteps, triggered it and it flipped on, maybe. So I figured out how to set it halfway. I worked with it until it would stay halfway. And then I jumped. I jumped up and down on the floor to make the light switch go, and it wouldn't do it. It would not do it. So the light turned on by itself when I needed it to. And that is my ghost story. It was a friendly ghost, obviously, because they were trying to help me, but it scared the you-know-what out of me.
And that is scary. And I'm in New Orleans, and so of course we believe
lots of ghosts there.
Ghost stories. Yeah, absolutely. And so I love to hear, I don't know, ghost stories like that. Also, this is a campfire, so of course we're going to tell ghost stories around the campfire.
Of course.
Why not? Also, okay, so a question that I had about the book as well, and this is one that I can skirt around without too many spoilers, hopefully. But the theme of capitalism is in this book and its evils. And that theme of capitalism sort of really drives the book a lot. And so I am wondering why you chose to tackle that theme in a horror book.
That's a really good question. Like I told you before, I don't always know why I do things, which sounds like the worst excuse some defendant would give in a courtroom somewhere. I don't know why I do things, Your Honor. In this particular case, I think I'm influenced again by Aliens or that entire series. Even Jurassic Park, and this idea of even the Titanic, which is, speed it up. We want to make a good impression. Hurry up, get through this ice field. We want to show off our investment. When capitalism is not inherently evil. It's like that whole thing. It's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. So I think what happens is when you get to a point where you're losing your humanity, where people are merely cogs in the process and you're stepping on them to get more money, more. In this case, in terms of the Aurora specifically, you had very much, the 1%. They were there. It was mostly a ship of those people and the people who unfortunately had to serve them or work with them. And there's kind of from that standpoint on the Aurora, it was sort of fun, like this idea of people who think they're untouchable and they're not. And the same thing kind of on the Titanic, where you had all these people who were very wealthy and you're not untouchable. You're not. But from the standpoint of the evil in the story, and I'm being very careful here, I think it's just that we are, in fact, our own worst enemies most of the time. And that's about all I can say. I mean, without.
Yeah, it's you major spoilers, but yes, I think that's interesting. And I think you do find it, like you're saying, in a lot of things like Jurassic Park and Alien, and it's like the same kind of thing, right? Where things go wrong.
we
because
want to make money.
right.
Yeah, right.
Because
Yeah.
money. Yeah, and class too. Those things all factor into all of these stories, including yours. But I think it's just really interesting how a lot of the times these things end up coinciding with each other. And that brings me to my next question, which is something that does not normally coincide with horror, which is romance, because there is a pretty lovely romance at the core of this book. And I'm not going to say too much about it, but I love it. And you write romance, and you can tell that you write romance, even though this book is not romance. Please don't think that. But you can tell that you write romance because there is one, and I thought it was really good and organic. And I think a lot of the times in these kind of stories, the romance can feel a little shoehorned in sometimes, and it did not feel like that. This was like a very lovely one. So I'm just wondering, like, why did you decide to add a love story to a horror novel?
Well, when you say it like that, it's so funny because I hadn't thought about it being unusual, but I guess it kind of is.
Mhm.
So, well, a couple things from a personal standpoint. I always like stories like that. I think that my favorite my favorite entry into the Aliens franchise Alien franchise is Aliens because there is a hint of romance there. I love the original Terminator because of Kyle and it's Kyle, right? I think that's right.
Kyle, yeah.
They don't have to be super. It doesn't have to like the entire story doesn't have to revolve around that romance, but I love that idea because it's human connection. And I feel like romance kind of gets a bad rap which is ridiculous because, a huge number of people on Earth want to be or are in a romantic relationship. And that's weird to me that we're like, ew, romance. Like, what? Okay. But specifically, I really glad that you said it was organic. That made me feel really good because that was my intention in the sense that when you have someone like Claire who does not trust herself, who is afraid to be close to people, what's that one thing we're going to do? We're going to make her want something that she can't have. We're going to make her want to be close to somebody even as she feels like she has to hold herself back, which is another layer of that tension, I hope. So specifically, I think that romance, the reason why, it's interesting, I'm glad you liked it. I have gotten a little flack for that. Like, I think they kind of feel like, oh,
For the
romance writer
romance?
can't. Uh-huh. Yep.
Wow.
Romance writer can't write a book without romance. That kind of thing. But the thing is that it wasn't really about that. Like, I would have really not shoehorned it in, or at least I hope I wouldn't have. But to me, it was about her. What is the hardest thing to do, which is to be vulnerable and care about somebody and admit that you care about somebody. And so that's why I did it, not just because I like writing kissing scenes, although I do like writing kissing scenes.
And it wasn't the romance was not like the main plot or even like
No.
nothing like that. It's like
Nope.
a very side thing
Yep.
that happens. And but it did make sense in terms of Claire's character because the same thing is sort of happening with her and her crew at the same time, like all the members of her crew, where it's like she cares about her crew but she doesn't want to be close to people, and so it's like this weird thing where it's like I don't know if I don't need to like show them I care about them, but they all kind of know that she cares about them anyway. It's like this whole thing. So she has the same thing with friendships as she does with
romantic relationships. Yep.
It's the same sort of thing. So it made sense to me because that's just her personality that like, yep. Okay, if I have a crush on somebody, I'm going to distance myself. Like she's doing that with her friends as well. So that's why it did feel like it was, just, yes, that's what happened to this character. Like it did not feel shoehorned or anything. And I'm mad at people who are mad at you for that. I think it's good.
Thank you.
And the people watching also think it's good. Somebody says they had a huge crush on this couple. So just let you know, the people watching liked this couple as well.
Thank you.
We do have a question from Anna in the audience who is watching, wants to know if there were any scenes that scared you while you were writing them.
Yes, definitely. So I have this story to tell you, and I will try to tell it carefully without spoilers. There's two scenes. The first one is the one, and I will be very careful. Those of you who've read the book will know it, in the cabin when Claire goes to sleep and then she wakes up abruptly. That was really kind of like, oh, my palms are sort of sweaty writing this. Boy, I have to go to bed at some point after I finish writing this. But also I think that was super fun because like it was really fun. That was like a very that like tapped into that very primal, almost like, you know, childhood type fear. And it was like, yeah, okay. The other one, so I'm a coffee shop writer. I love to write in coffee shops. The pandemic has been brutal for that, obviously. But I love doing that. It helps me concentrate. And in fact, I wear noise canceling headphones. I can still hear things, but you know, head down, focused. You know, I'm really at it. And I was working on a scene. Again, I'm trying to be careful. Where Claire is on the Aurora, and she's walking in the dark in the hallway with some people, and and she feels what I'm going to say is like kind of a ghostly hand against her cheek. So I'm writing that scene. I've got my Starbucks, just that's where I was working at the time, writing at the time, is back to back booths. I'm trying to show you and you can't see my hands, but it's back to back booths. So my back is to somebody else's back as I'm sitting there writing or whatever. So I'm working away, not paying attention. I'm into this scene, and all of a sudden I feel a hand on the back of my neck. And again, I should have screamed. Screaming would have made more sense. Instead of like locked up and air stuck. And then I kind of whip around, and there's like a toddler standing in the booth behind me, waving. She had wiped her hand against the back of my neck. I don't know, to get my attention. I don't know. The funny thing is her parents who were with her had no idea that she'd done that. They just saw me whip around, and I was like, oh, she scared me because she touched me. They didn't know that. They're like, yeah, okay. And the dad goes, yeah, kids are scary. And they're both like looking at me like I'm insane. And I want to be like, no, your kid touched me. But then I was like, that's weird. Let's not do that. So those two scenes are probably the two scariest scenes for completely different reasons.
Those are two very scary scenes, though. Also, as a reader, it's one of those things, that first one you talked about where Claire just wakes up abruptly. That is a very, like, you don't want to go to sleep after it because you're afraid of what you're going to wake up to. And this book, the end of this book, which is what you're talking about, the dark hallways, is kind of towards the end, will make you afraid of the dark, because it's like, what are the things, like, they can't see, and there are things. And so it's like, what? Oh my gosh. Like, I don't want to, like, it's one of these things where, you know, I come home at night and like the house is really dark. And you like put your key in the door and you walk in, and like everything's dark until you turn the light on. It's one of these things where it's like, please turn a light on immediately, because it's like, I don't want to have to walk even like 3 steps down the hallway to turn my light on, because like I might feel the ghostly hand against my cheek. Like I can't. So like, okay, I need to. And I was reading this book before bed because I'm a masochist, I guess. So I was like, oh, like I'll just read the, and it's like one of these things where every time I just forgot that this book was scary, I guess. Like I'm like, oh, I want to know what happens. Like, let me just read before bed. And then I was like, how am I supposed to go to sleep now? I don't know. Oh my gosh.
To be fair, like some of that is just me in general. Like I'm still one of those people. I think I have a very active imagination, so it's hard for me to shut that. It's not something you can turn on only when you want to use it. So like I will go to the basement. We let the dogs out through a sliding glass door in the basement, and sometimes I hit the wrong switch, and then I'm in the basement in the dark trying to climb, and I'm climbing the stairs. It's not a problem, but I it's like I can feel something like behind me, and then I'm like running up the stairs. Like out of breath at the top. He's like, my husband's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, nothing, it's fine. I didn't want to be in the dark. And
I just read a horror book. That's what's wrong. Like,
I know what's in the dark. I know I'm not staying down there.
I make up what's in the dark, so you know.
It's worse, because that means it comes with me everywhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We have one more question from the audience, who Kelly wants to know, do you have a go-to horror movie recommendation for self-described scaredy cats?
Ooh. Hi Kelly, by the way, and hi Anna from earlier. So okay, so scary. I am that way. I don't do well with scary stuff, mainly because again my brain takes it and runs with it, and then it's like 2 a.m. and I am hearing something weird from, you know, the floor region.
Yeah. Monsters under the bed, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Scary. So movies that I can tolerate usually are ones I don't do well with gore. I just don't. I have a really hard time with that, and I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure why, but I just think so. To me, I tend to like the psychological horror instead. But I also like me when I make a book recommendation to my sister. I'm only going to recommend books that end okay. Um, so I'm only going to recommend horror movies that end okay. So you have to sort of know going into that. I like Event Horizon. If you haven't seen Event Horizon, that's a classic and very much an influence for this book. Ghost Ship, if you can get past the initial opening gory scene, is fantastic. I also like someone recommended to me, Rachel Vincent, actually the writer Rachel Vincent, who's amazing, and a friend had recommended Pandorum to me, which I had not seen, and I loved that movie. Those were all great. And then on the comedy side, because I love horror comedy, Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day 2. Those are both fun, and so I typically lean toward the PG-13 type stuff. So and I just love that because it was such a turn on the trope, and it was really fun.
Awesome. Horror comedy is one of my favorite things to watch.
Yeah.
Because it's so it puts two things together that don't go together, and it's just so
Yes.
ridiculous. I love anything that's horror comedy at all. Event Horizon freaked me out. That movie
Yes.
was so scary.
So the part where they find, for those of you who don't know, Event Horizon is a movie actually very similar in some ways to this, where there was a ship with an experimental engine, and then they fired at the engine, and everyone's like, yay! And then it vanished and nobody ever heard from them again. And then 14 years later, it pops back up, and poor Lawrence Fishburne is sent out with his team to go check for survivors and blah, blah, blah. And so when they get on the ship, I won't spoil anything, but they find these ship logs of what happened. And it's all really flashy and flashy in terms of there's you can't really see what's going on. It's all cut together and there's blood and gore. And I have to watch that part like this. Even now, even knowing all of it, I can't watch that part. I really don't do well with stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's such a good movie.
It is good. I do okay if it's super fake gore, like in horror comedy where, like Evil Dead or something where it's just super fake gore everywhere. I'm fine with that. But if it's realistic, I can't deal with that either.
Well, that's one of the things I loved about Happy Death Day and that whole friend, that the two movies in that, is it's so ridiculous and she's so mad. So for those who haven't watched that, it's kind of like Groundhog Day where it loops. And so she knows she's caught in this loop every time she keeps getting killed by the serial killer. And so at one point, he stabs her and she's like, again? And then she dies and it starts all over again. And so that to me kind of works because even though there is some blood and there is but it's as soon as she does this, we're going to get right back up to the top. But what was interesting about that is it kind of got to that terror of what kind of existence would that be if you had to spend the rest of your life being killed? Not just the same day over and over again, but actually dying that way every single. Oh my gosh, it's a lot of fun. But I don't know. My sister and I went to the first one. I think we saw the first one and the second one together. I'm not sure, and it was a lot of fun. We cracked up. So
I'm gonna have to watch that because I haven't seen it, but it sounds like my jam for sure.
It's really good, and the second one was very good too. It was actually a little more even science fiction-y, which I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to spoil it. But it was a lot of fun. So definitely, I highly recommend both of those.
Awesome. And do you have any book recommendations for us?
I do. I keep these are my ones that I keep in my office as inspiration because I love them so much, and I read widely, so these are going to go all over the place. This is Red Widow by Alma Katsu. I think I'm saying her last name correctly. How about that? There we go. And it's coming out in paperback very soon. And it's amazing. So she's known for writing horror, and of course she's amazing at horror, but this is based on her experiences working for the CIA, because she was like CIA, NSA. She's one of those really intimidating, scary people, and she's an amazing person. And this book is so good. It's like being able to tag along with Dana Scully to the FBI. Do you know what I mean? It's different agency, but it's just very inside baseball, but it's so cool. Okay, so that's that one. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Oh, where's my camera? There's my camera. I freaking loved this book, and I'm dying for the sequel. I'm so impatient because I need to know if we're gonna go back to. I can't say anything. Okay. It's really good, and you should read it. And I read it from the library, bought it, and listened to it in an audiobook, and that's how much I love it. And I'm not a rereader, so it's really good. And then my last recommendation from the romance side of things is one of my favorite reads this year, The Love Hypothesis. And I have a special connection just because this was originally, I think, a Raylo fanfic, and I love Raylo.
Was it?
Yes.
I didn't realize that. Oh my gosh, that makes it better for me.
Because when I read it, it had his POV in there, and then she changed you. If you're not a fan of Raylo or have no idea what I'm talking about, you will not be able to tell. It made my cheeks hurt from smiling. It made me cry by the end. It's just so good. And the bonus is that it's Raylo, if you know what that is.
That makes it even better, I think.
I think so too.
Star Wars fan.
Yes, me too.
Awesome.
Bring back Ben Solo. Let's go. Come on.
Seriously. Okay, and so we only have about 5 minutes left. And so I'm gonna put our campfire. Here we go. Back on the screen. Here we go. And I want to play 2 truths and a lie. This is a camp game. So hopefully you've been able to think of some stuff. So Stacey's going to give me 2 truths and a lie. And I will ask for help from the audience if y'all are watching too. We're on a little bit of a delay with Crowdcast, so it might, I think it's like 30 seconds or so. So if you give me your 2 truths and a lie, I'll see what the audience thinks and I'll see what I think. And then we'll have a collective answer and we'll see if we're right.
Okay. All right, ready. Here we go.
Ready.
I worked as a referee in college for basketball.
Okay.
I went to space camp when I was 9. Okay. And I have a retired racing greyhound.
Ooh, okay. So basketball referee, space camp at 9, a retired racing greyhound. Which one of these do we think is a lie? This is hard. I don't know.
And my brother, I think my brother's in the audience. Do not help with this one.
Don't spoil it. Okay, so what do we think? Space camp, basketball referee, retired greyhound. I'm gonna see if the audience has anything. I again, we're on a delay. I kind of believe that you went to space camp at 9. That seems believable to me, based on our conversation. Basketball referee, I don't know. That one is iffy for me. And a racing greyhound. I know that you have dog in your bio. It says dogs and books. But I don't know if one of them would be a racing greyhound versus like just a pet greyhound. So this one is hard. What do you think? Okay, so somebody says they think space camp at 9 is the lie. Okay. So, okay. I think I'm going to go. Does anybody else from the audience have? Okay, referee. Great. Y'all are so much help. Thanks, audience.
Did they split it?
It's like somebody saying referee, somebody saying space camp. It's like, oh my goodness. This is not helpful, audience. Okay. I am going to go with the racing greyhound. I don't think you have a racing greyhound.
Not only do I have one, I have had multiple in 20 years that I've been married. Yes, we have retired racers. Right now I have 1 retired racer and 2 hunting dogs, which the 2 hunting dogs are crazy. The retired racing greyhounds, you guys, if anybody's out there looking for a dog, they all need homes, especially as tracks are closing down. They are beautiful, intelligent, and so laid back. Do you want me to tell you what the lie is?
Yeah, what's the lie?
Well, first of all, I want to know who outed me on space camp, because that's the lie.
Anna said she thought that space camp was a lie. So that was
okay, Anna,
you were correct.
Anna would probably know, given the number of emails we have exchanged, probably.
So Anna, you are correct. Way to go. You got it correct. That Stacey, and that was a good lie though, because that was like the most believable one to me. I'm like, oh, you wrote a sci-fi horror book and whatever. Like, you seem like the kind of person that would have gone to space camp. So not for 1 second did I think it was that one.
Is like they always say that to make the best lie is closest to the truth. I really did go to camp when I was 9, and I wanted to go to horseback riding camp, but it was not that. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like some kind of like It was LOMC. It was Lutheran Outdoor Ministries, because my dad's a pastor, and it was some kind of but it was like camp where he had to like play in the mud, and I hated it. I hated it, but I would have gone to space camp. That'd have been cool.
Space camp would have been awesome. I know. That's a good thing for me to use in Two Truths and a Lie, because I think people would believe that I went to space camp at 9 as well, and I did not. I always wanted to go to space camp,
Right?
and never actually got to go to space camp. So I might steal that if I ever play this again.
You totally should. Are you of a generation to remember the movie Space Camp? Do you remember that one? Do you know that one?
Space Camp? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was
terrible probably if I watched it now, but I loved it as a kid. I loved it.
That was like the late 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had Leah Thompson in it. And I loved her back then.
Yes.
I don't know what she does now, but anyway, in the 80s she was a big deal.
She wasn't. Her daughter is Zoe Deutsch. So her daughter is doing stuff too.
I realized that. Okay.
Yeah, because they were doing something together. I don't know. And I was like, oh, hey, now that I see them together, I can see that. Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Well,
trivia.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this virtual campfire. I've had a lot of fun. I'm going to show people my little, I don't know if you can see it. Well, let's see if I can, my plate here with all my s'mores. Here we go.
Oh, they look, that's up.
My smorgasbord of s'more stuff. And you can like, bloop, and here, I'll show you real quick. I'm going to make a quick s'more. It actually really does catch the marshmallow on fire and everything. It smokes. It was smoking a whole lot more a second ago. There we go. Got to blow it out just like you do. Put it on here. Y'all should really make this. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing this is because if you registered for this event, I'm going to send out the recipe of like what you need to make these. So if you ever want to make keyboard s'mores for yourself, you can do that. And look, it's like, it really looks like a tiny mini.
Looks so delicious.
S'more. It's so good.
Love burned marshmallows.
I know. It's so good. And so everyone who registered for this event will get it in email because we got your email from registering. So I'm going to send everyone the tiny keyboard s'mores. So if you ever want to do it for something else, for an event, or like, I think it's really a good idea if you ever do like Zooms for meetings and stuff, just have everybody have the little keyboard s'mores. Anyway, if you want to do them for things, I'll send out the thing. I'm going to blow out this candle before I burn the place down. But that's my keyboard s'mores. And we do have copies of this book, Dead Silence. Stacy sent us book plates, so thank you for doing that. So if you order from us, there is a buy the book button on the bottom of the screen. If you click that, you can order the book from us and get the signed book plate with it. We will ship anywhere in the country. So if you're watching this, maybe you already ordered the book. Awesome. And if you didn't, you can still do that if you want, or order another copy. It makes a great gift for someone you want to scare.
I love that.
It's a great Valentine's Day gift just because of what it is. So, and there's a romance in it. You can be like, there's romance in this. Like, here you go.
100%.
So
the other stuff.
Right? Exactly. Just ignore everything else and read that part. So thank you so much for doing this virtual campfire. And thank you everyone for watching. And if you are watching later, this will go on YouTube eventually. And so if you're watching this later on YouTube and you want our keyboard s'mores recipe for all the stuff that you need, you can just email us events@tubbyandcoos.com and we will send that to you. If you're watching in the future, if we have time traveled and you want it, we will send it to you. So yes, thank you so much for talking with me about the book and for letting me nerd out about the book, because I'll be throwing this one at people for a while. So.
I love to hear that. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for talking to me about the book and enjoying it. And I just love that. Thank you.
Yes, and again, thank you everyone for watching, and we will see y'all, I guess, for our next event whenever that happens. So y'all have a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much.